Welcome to Bridging the Education Gap, the podcast where parents, teachers, and education leaders come together to share insights, stories, and strategies that connect learning at home and in school. Whether you're a parent navigating homework struggles, a teacher fostering classroom breakthroughs, or an education leader seeking innovative solutions, this is your space to learn, grow, and collaborate. Each week, we dive into real conversations about education, from tackling pain points to celebrating success stories, all with one goal: to bridge the gap and empower every child's learning journey. I'm your host, Jessica Shelley. Let's get started. Today, we have an amazing guest with us, Rich Czyz, an experienced educator, school leader, and the author of multiple books on professional development and school leadership. We'll be diving into his journey in education, his unique approach to teacher PD, and his upcoming book on productivity for school leaders. Rich, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Yeah, well, let's start off with just giving some context to our listeners. So tell us more about your journey in education. Why did you decide to go into education? Was that something you always knew you wanted to do? But tell us your story.
Yeah, so I actually did not start in education. I had kind of a different journey than I think most teachers and educators do. I was actually a political science major in college. I graduated. I wasn't necessarily doing anything with my degree, but at the time I was doing a lot of coaching. So doing a lot of coaching of little league baseball teams. Basically once I stopped playing baseball at age 15, I just picked up coaching. So I was coaching, my friends' little. That kind of took me in the route of education, I think, because I was working with kids, I was enjoying it. And after I graduated with my degree in political science, I decided, hey, you know what, maybe let me give teaching a shot. And I started to do some additional summer camps for kids and things like that. And I said that was really my calling. I needed to be helping lead kids and helping kids kind of move forward in their own growth and learning.
So you mentioned coaching a little bit, and I think when we originally connected, you talked about, Little League Baseball and how that played a role in your transition. So maybe you could tap into that a little bit more. I think you touched on it just a minute ago, but how did that influence your approach when you started working with students?
Yeah, so I think just working with kids and when you're on a baseball field, it's very similar to being in front of a classroom, right? You're trying to get them to learn something very specific, on the baseball field. You're hitting grounders. You're trying to get them to, field a baseball, get the glove down on the ground, and you're repeating directions and clarifying directions and repeating questions. And it's a lot of what you do in the classroom. And so a lot of that definitely carried over into the classroom for me. It was kind of a crash course in education. When I did go back to get my certification to teach in New Jersey, I only had 4 courses. So they gave me 2 child development courses, a course in English language arts and a course in math, and then threw me into a student teaching experience. So it was kind of a crash course. And then from my student teaching, I got hired, I think on August 29th or something like that to start school on September 1st, and gave me, 28 fifth graders, and it just went from there. So it was kind of a crash course in education. I kind of learned as I went. I think year 1 was incredibly difficult, but by year 2, I felt a little bit more comfortable. But I think all of that coaching experience, I think, definitely helped in the classroom.
Amazing. And then you started as a teacher in education and then you moved into administration. So how did that kind of transpire? And then what connected your passion for coaching to leadership maybe?
Yeah, so I think, basically I taught 5th grade for several years, and then we had a new principal in the building who, kind of served as my mentor. He was our math supervisor in the district. I really enjoyed teaching math. That was the subject area that I was responsible for in our 5th grade team. And he kind of just had me do a couple of workshops with teachers based on some of the different math strategies I was using in my classroom. And from there, it kind of just took off. I loved being in front of teachers. I loved sharing the cool things that I was doing in the classroom with them, and seeing how they then took that, kind of added their own spin, put that into their classroom to see how it was working. I did get the chance to do a little bit of coaching during that time, in addition to doing the workshops, going in, just seeing what they were doing in the classroom. From there, it kind of flew. I stepped out of the classroom into a basic skills math position, where I got to work with all grade levels, which was kind of nice because I had that very specific 5th grade mindset, and then suddenly getting to see, how kindergartners interpreted math problems, or 1st grade or 2nd grade. And then from there, I think that that coaching piece, that coaching background really lent itself to working with adults, right? And I think that was my goal, is like doing professional development with teachers, working with my mentor. And he kind of I think saw the leadership potential in me. So from there he did help me to get a position which was like a coaching, instructional technology coaching position within the district. And it just kind of took off, down that leadership path from there. And I really never looked back. So from that role, I did jump into curriculum. I think that was like one of my biggest strengths, but, it's, and now building leadership as well. So it's kind of been a natural progression, I think, from the coaching and teaching positions as well.
Sounds like both of those experiences really have kind of played pivotal roles in where you are today. And now you're kind of coaching teachers because you're in education. So that's awesome with, professional development and things. So I came across your book, 4 O'Clock Faculty, which focuses on innovative professional development. So can you tell us more about your approach to PD and maybe some strategies that either teachers could take away or school leaders might be able to take away to their building?
Yeah, absolutely. So my biggest thing with professional development is that in a lot of districts, we're not necessarily doing it the right way. And I think, in a lot of districts, it is something that maybe is on paper. Hey, we have our, 4 PD days during the year, and great, teachers are learning and getting what they need. And unfortunately, in a lot of places, that is not the case. Teachers often struggle with the professional development that they're getting. It kind of started in my role as a teacher. When I was hired for my first position, I was one of 4 new teachers in our building. Right. And, our principal, I was looking to our principal as a first year teacher who, had just a couple of classes under my belt, looking to her to say like, okay, enrich me, develop me, like make me a better teacher. And she was trying to do that for 14, brand new teachers who were first year professionals. And I think I quickly realized like, no, this is not her responsibility. This is kind of my responsibility to develop myself and enrich myself as a teacher. And I had a passion for it. So like every workshop that I could go sit in, every extra staff session that was offered, I loved sitting and learning about new strategies that I could implement in the classroom. And that's really kind of where the 4 O'Clock faculty developed, was that passion for professional development and learning, and really taking what I was learning and sharing that with other educators. That has really always been the goal of 4 O'Clock faculty. Kind of started as a blog, writing and sharing what I was doing there, and then eventually it turned into the book about professional development. But I really think PD needs to be about choice, variety, giving teachers exactly what they need. And, a lot of times if they're not getting it from their building principal or their supervisor in district, is finding those people who will help you to grow. And whether that's, a colleague who's next door, maybe a supervisor who comes and visits the building, once a month, you need to find those people who are going to help you grow as a teacher and as a professional. And that's really what the 4 O'Clock faculty is all about. It's going beyond to kind of extend yourself as a professional and as an educator.
Those things that you just mentioned, I think also translate over to the classroom, right? When we're talking about meeting individual student needs, we also need to think about that of meeting the individual teacher needs when it comes to growth and personalization of learning opportunities or growth opportunities. So that's really interesting. And as a former public school teacher, myself, classroom teacher, I was like, oh my goodness, this makes perfect sense for those little bodies that are sitting in the seats too. Yeah, I mean, you had mentioned, how traditional PD kind of falls short in meeting those needs. So what are some additional ways besides just maybe making those connections that school leaders could maybe help create more meaningful teacher-driven PD opportunities?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is I call like bite-sized chunks of PD, right? So, you may have your 1 building meeting a month or your 2 building meetings a month where teachers are actually sitting down to talk about maybe a strategy that they're implementing in the classroom. But I think a lot more of professional development happens on a daily basis. So a lot of it is in those conversations. So if you're a building leader, getting out into the building, having those conversations with teachers on a daily basis. We have done something in the past called copier PD, where, as teachers are standing at the copier, I have a little flyer over the copier that has a couple of different strategies or tech tools that teachers can utilize, so that, you're kind of standing there, but you're also, looking and glancing at something and learning something that you can take back to your classroom. So I think it's a lot of that. I've often done we do coffee EDU, where, let's just let's have a cup of coffee. Let's have a conversation around maybe something that you're doing in the classroom, or maybe a project that we're going to collaborate on as educators. And I think for building leaders, doing those types of things on a regular basis, you want to kind of ingrain that professional development culture in your building, not just make it a, 2 times a month we're going to learn, or 4 times a year that we're going to, not have students and we're going to learn. I think it is really making that a part of your culture, right? That professional development has to be there. People have to care about it, and really giving it to teachers in a way that works for them. So as I said, I'm very big on choice. If I'm doing a session, I might do one session in the morning, one in the afternoon. That works for different teacher schedules. Some have to get out to after school activities, right? It's really about building it for teachers versus, I always say it's like professional development with teachers versus professional development at teachers, right? A lot of times that's what we do, is we throw professional development at teachers and it doesn't work for them. So I think if we can work with teachers to kind of plan, to build, to figure out what it is that they need, I think those strategies for ingraining it on a daily basis will help any building leader.
Amazing. Amazing. And, kind of transitioning over, you actually wrote a book called The Rogue Leader as well. So maybe you could elaborate on maybe some of those key strategies that school leaders could apply in their building, if we haven't already talked about them today.
Yeah, so Rogue Leader, again, was kind of built out of 4 o'clock faculty and just updating some of those strategies and things that we're doing in the building. One of the things that I wrote about in the book was called Fight Club, and it was the idea of, sometimes as educators, we love to debate and argue about things, and sometimes it's taking a topic that might have 2 different ends of the spectrum, something like testing, right? We have many educators who have strong opinions on testing, or homework, right, is another one. But bringing educators together to kind of have a lively debate, right? Like, well, I won't call it a fight or an argument, but a lively debate about, how should we be doing homework? How should we be preparing for testing within our building? And I think, again, when you have those conversations with teachers and you bring different voices to the mix, I think that can help everyone grow. If somebody is using a specific strategy in their classroom for, getting ready for the state test in the spring, maybe that's something that is going to help everybody. We had a teacher a couple of years ago who shared the writing strategies that she was doing, right? She was an amazing educator, amazing instructor in writing and getting her kids to do really, really accomplished writing in her 4th grade classroom. And it was like, let's take all these strategies that you're using and let's share those with others. And I think that's what being a rogue leader is all about. You don't necessarily, it's not about the title, right? It's not about the title on the door. It's more about how you're leading others and connecting with others. And I think, that's what we miss a lot is, the principal in the building is one person, the supervisor is one person, but it's really everyone who is kind of carrying on that legacy of professional development. So I think if we can get everybody kind of working together, recognizing that they are leaders in whatever different way they may be, I think that's, getting all those rogue leaders together is how we can improve education.
Just magnifies that impact throughout the building, really. Amazing, amazing. And then you have a new book coming out called Autopilot. Can you give us a little preview about what readers can expect?
Yeah, so Autopilot it's called Autopilot Practical Productivity for School Leaders. It's not just necessarily for administrators, but anybody who is in a position of school leadership, a team leader, someone who's working within their grade level or department at the high school level. And it's really about productivity. How do we be more effective in our jobs? And I think there is so much on educators' plates right now to do, multiple roles and, teach and do all of the administrative work that goes along with that and the paperwork and, sometimes be a parent or a nurse or a coach or any of those different roles that we're doing. And Autopilot is all about building systems for making it a little bit easier, making so that you're not as overwhelmed, so that you're not burned out from the day. As a building administrator, I will have 17 fires during the day that I'm trying to put out. And if I don't have systems in place to get kind of some of that busy work done and some of those other things and delegating, my workload is not going to get done and I'm not able to come home to my family without thinking about some of those things. So I think it is about making sure that you have systems in place to support yourself and answering all of your emails. Autopilot is about building those systems and building those strategies into your day.
Is there any specific skills or strategies that maybe listeners could go and apply today? Or is it more about like a comprehensive system in order to make sure everything works?
So it is about comprehensive system, but when you look at the book, you will find very specific strategies that you can take out and implement the next day. And I actually do have one section in the book, and I kind of wrote this and said, when you read this book, eventually I'm going to go on a podcast to kind of promote this book. And the one question I'm going to be asked is, what's the one strategy that you would implement from the book? And I think the biggest piece is elimination, right? A lot of times we do things because we've done them for a long time, right? We have things on our plates that, well, we've always done it this way, right? Or you kind of have that nostalgia for, I've been doing this since the beginning of my career. And a lot of times we do things that don't necessarily help us. They don't provide a lot of value for us. And I think the one strategy that I could tell every school leader, every teacher, every administrator, anyone who's in a classroom even, is eliminate some of those things, get some of those things off of your plate if they're not providing value. I think a lot of times in education, we hold on to some of those things for too long. Even from 4 o'clock faculty or rogue leader, I talked about PD as a museum of past practices, right? We hold on to those things and we shouldn't. And I think if we can eliminate enough of those things off of our plate, it just makes it that much easier to do more meaningful work. So, I think that's probably the biggest strategy that I would share from the book with everyone is get rid of some of those things that don't matter to your day.
I like that too, in the sense for like our teachers that are listeners as well to the podcast, where you don't have to grade every single practice activity that you use as classwork, that you're, engaging a child around a conversation around the activity. That was one of the big kind of wake up calls that I had as a classroom teacher, is I don't have to put every single thing into the grade book. There's a lot of value that's just coming from that engagement with the students. Great tips. I mean, before we wrap up today, is there anything else or any like lasting thoughts that you want to leave for our listeners about the conversation?
Yeah, no, I think probably the one thing I would want to say to educators everywhere right now is I feel like we constantly put more things on our plate every day as educators. And I always try to motivate and remain positive about education and those who are in the classrooms or in those leadership roles every day. We have a lot of amazing things happening in education right now. And I think a lot of times we focus on the negative things, but I think if we can kind of highlight what others are doing within the classroom, within our schools, to make sure that again, they're constantly growing, helping students to grow, but supporting each other as well. So I think, that's kind of the message that I started with on the 4 o'clock faculty blog is we're here to support each other. So I think just constantly doing that, trying to help people become better educators, better people, and, and in doing that they're helping their students to become better learners, better students, and better people as well. So
amazing. And then where can people find your books or connect with you online?
Yeah, so everything is at 4o'clockfaculty.com. I usually post a blog post once a week there. There's probably a backlog of about 1,500 blog posts that are on there over the past several years. All of the book links are there as well. And anything that I have done professionally can be found there. So 4o'clockfaculty.com, and you can find everything that you need right there.
I'll be sure to leave it in the podcast notes as well. So the description will have all of those links and everything there for you. But Rich, this has been such an insightful conversation about rethinking PD and growth in general in education. So thank you so much for sharing your journey, strategies, and the sneak peek into your new book. And for our listeners, be sure to check out Rich's books and resources. We'll have the links again in the show notes as mentioned. To our listeners, thank you for tuning in to another episode of Bridging the Education Gap. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe and share it with others in your community. Join us next time as we continue to explore how educators and parents can work together to empower every child's learning journey.